It's time. I've been preparing for this for months. I've done 4 trailer reactions. I've given reviews to every single movie in this endless franchise. I even did that one video where I reacted to Mark Hamill being cast as Chucky. After ingesting a truckload of coffee, apparently. But now it's here, and it's time for me to review it. Child's Play 2019. Okay, just a brief recap before we get into the plot. This film is a remake to the original 1988 movie, and it received no support from creator Don Mancini or from original Chucky actor Brad Dourif. In fact, a number of the people that were involved in the original franchise tried to distance themselves from this remake as much as possible, including Don Mancini, Alex Vincent, Christina Leese, and Jennifer Tilly. Playing Chucky this time around is Mark Hamill, known best for playing Luke Skywalker. Although he has broken into voice acting quite a bit in his older age, becoming the definitive version of the Joker to many Batman fans. Mark Hamill may not necessarily be a big-time celebrity, but he does have a substantial fan following, which might be the reason why the director of the first film, Tom Holland, called his casting a smart move, though he'd say little else on the matter. When advertisements for this movie started coming out, many fans, and by many fans I of course mean me, took note of the fact that this remake seemed to be taking the story in an entirely different direction. Just in case you need a reminder, the original movie was about a serial killer who used voodoo to transfer his soul into a doll. And he then spent the movie's entire plot trying to transfer his soul back into a human host, specifically into this child here, Andy Barclay. The remake, however, seems to be getting rid of all of that voodoo stuff. In fact, Chucky isn't even possessed this time around. He's a robot. So if that's the case, then how are they going to be able to recreate, any of the plot? Well, let's get into that now, shall we? And yes, there will be spoilers. I spoiled all of the other movies for you, so why stop now? The movie opens up on a commercial advertising the Kazlan Company. Yes, Kazlan, not Play Pals like in the original franchise. I guess that they decided that since the company makes, literally everything, they needed a more adult name. Kazlan offers everything from voice-modulated lighting all the way to self-driving taxis. But probably their most relevant inventions would be the world's most hideous robot butlers. Nothing could have prepared me for just how ugly this doll is. I saw advertisements and pictures, and I was still startled. He looks like what would happen if you bleached out Shrek and then shrunk him in the wash. Anyway, once the advertisement ends, we cut to a factory in Vietnam, where one of the workers is slacking on the job. His boss yells at him, which prompts the employee to start tampering with the doll's hardwiring, making him more uninhibited. Really? That's the reason for this? Chucky exists because one douchebag didn't like his boss? That's a joke, right? We're supposed to laugh? Pretty dark joke if it is, considering immediately afterwards he throws himself out a window. The original movie had voodoo and serial killers and cops chasing down serial killers, and there was lightning that struck a toy store and caused it to explode. And here, just one douchebag mad at his boss. Oh, what the hell am I doing? If I keep comparing it to the original movie, this is gonna be a long fucking review. I promise to refrain from doing that from this point forward. But mostly because from this point forward, this movie has nothing to do with the original. Anyway, cut back to America, where Andy Barclay lives with his older sister, Mom, played by Aubrey Plaza, because they didn't want to cast some gross older actress for this role, okay? Or make Andy, his appropriate age either, because now he's like 12, which, would make it just like a little bit weird if he's still obsessed with getting this doll for his birthday, but I'm sure they can work around it. Or not. Yeah, in this movie, the reason why Karen decides to get Andy a good guy doll for his birthday, a buddy doll, is because she catches him watching a video of a buddy doll humping a thin. Look, I'm glad that you're trying to be supportive of your child's weird fetish, but, maybe don't buy your 12-year-old boy the real-life version of everything that he watches porn of. There's also this heavy implication that she's buying the buddy doll for Andy because he's lonely and he has a hard time making friends. He is the new kid in town. He has a hearing impairment that doesn't affect his life at all, but people like to bring up around him. And he's sad because his older sister, Mom, started dating someone new. And all of this has culminated to mean that the only friend he's made is his adult neighbor, Officer Mike Norris. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if this is supposed to be the same character from the first movie. They have the same name, and they're both cops, but, that's where the similarities end. In the original movie, Mike Norris was a serious cop that wouldn't entertain an idea as silly as a living doll. But at the same time, he wouldn't rest until he knew what was going on. In this movie, Mike Norris is, nice. He has a mom. He invites strange, lonely boys over to his place for dinner when he catches them in the hallway alone. Besides that, there really isn't much to him. I'm not even entirely sure why he's here, except as a name drop. In fact, that's sort of what all of these characters feel like. What does Andy have to do with the Andy from the previous movie? Or this Karen, really? They're all entirely different characters. Not that that matters, really. This is a remake, so it does need to take things in a different direction. I'm just saying, if they had renamed these characters, this would have had nothing to do with Child's Play. But moving forward, Karen gets the doll for Andy, and the first thing that it does upon being set up is ask for them to choose a name for it. Andy tries to name him Han Solo. Get it? Because Mark Hamill was in Star Wars? But the doll mishears him and thinks that his name is Chucky. How? How does Chucky sound even remotely like Han Solo? I get it. Your average 12-year-old boy is not going to be naming their robot doll something as lame as Chucky, but, they've had to really reach for that one. At first, Chucky seems a little bit defective due to being tampered with by a lazy Vietnamese factory worker. And it really doesn't help that whoever made these dolls decided that they should have the most irritating personality possible. They're just so upbeat all the time. And they sin. That's just like a regular thing for them. But somehow, Andy resists the urge to punch Chucky in the face every time he opens his mouth, which I think makes him a stronger man than me. And considering Chucky's only desire appears to be making Andy happy and staying with Andy forever, Andy starts to really appreciate Chucky, which is not at all my experience. Usually, when I start telling a man things like, "I'll never leave you," they run in the exact opposite direction. Anyway, the other reason why Andy starts getting attached to Chucky is because, because Chucky swears. which apparently isn't something that buddy dolls are supposed to do. Yep, they've turned Chucky swearing into an actual plot point in this movie. The neighborhood children are so entertained by Chucky's swearing that Andy actually starts making friends. He even invites them over to his house, which leads to the ultimate turning point for Chucky. Because, you see, Andy and his friends gather to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Honestly, I was just waiting for them to replay the part where Leatherface jerks off his chainsaw. Anyway, Chucky feels ignored by Andy. And watching him and his friends laugh at all the gory bits of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, he starts to put 2 and 2 together. Violence makes Andy happy. So Chucky goes to the kitchen, grabs a knife, and promptly gets it taken away from him. Frightened of Chucky, Andy shoves him in a closet. And apparently gets over it by the next morning, because the next time that we see Chucky, he's out of the closet and frightening Aubrey Plaza's boyfriend, Shane. This act, again, gets Chucky shoved in a closet. I don't really know why Chucky needed to get thrown in for 2 different reasons, but okay. I guess the movie was just about 5 minutes too short, and they needed to throw in something. Shortly after this, Andy returns from school and discovers not only that Chucky has escaped the closet, but that he's murdered the family cat to make Andy happy. This, of course, gets Chucky shoved back in the closet. Though I have to admit, this does lead to one of the very few legitimately creepy scenes in the movie. Andy wakes up in the middle of the night to hear Chucky replaying the sounds of the cat being murdered. It's incredibly unsettling, especially when you consider that Chucky thinks that what he's doing will make Andy happy. And I guess that it never occurs to Andy to, tell Chucky that he's not that big of a fan of murder, because things only get worse from here. You remember Aubrey Plaza's boyfriend, Shane? Yeah, well, this movie goes above and beyond to prove that he is absolute scum. He hits Andy, he's cheating on his wife, and he doesn't eat the cookie that Aubrey Plaza made especially for him. And so Chucky comes to the conclusion that killing him would make everybody happier. Which he isn't wrong. That night, he follows Shane home and runs him over with a lawnmower. Take note, my pets, lawnmowers always make for amazing deaths. Oh, and it only gets better from here. After all of this, inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is a good movie to be inspired by, Chucky cuts off Shane's face, props it up on a watermelon, and delivers it as a gift to Andy. This has to be a joke, right? The movie plays it so serious, but this has to be a joke. This movie is a horror comedy, right? Right? Oh, and it only gets better from there. Although Andy has done absolutely nothing wrong, and he's friends with a cop, and he can explain everything that's happened up until this point, he still decides that he needs to hide the face mask. Except his older sister, Mom, catches him on his way out the door. So Andy has to come up with an elaborate lie to explain the existence of this wrapped up watermelon skin mask, which in some convoluted way results in him having no other choice than to give it to Officer Mike Norris's mom as a present. So he has to break into her apartment before she figures out what it is, so that he can get it back and dispose of it properly. And all of this is presented almost entirely seriously. I think this movie is a little bit aware of the absolute ridiculousness that is all of this, but not nearly aware enough. That's the scary bit. It isn't even a bloody knife or some sort of normal evidence like that. We are literally talking about a man's face and eyeballs propped up against a fucking watermelon. What the fuck is this movie? Anyway, of course Andy decides to deactivate Chucky after this. But because he is the absolute worst at disposing of bodies. Honestly, come on, I was better at this at the age of 12 than he is. Some creepy guy in the building gets a hold of Chucky and rebuilds him. And Chucky repays him by throwing him on a table saw. From this point forward, the rest of the movie is Chucky desperately begging Andy to take him back. And when Andy keeps saying no, Chucky keeps killing the people around him until there's no one left. Which honestly reminds me so much of me and my ex. I'm just saying, if you'd only take me back, David, then maybe I'd stop sending you pieces of your best friend in the mail. The final straw is when Chucky takes Andy's older sister, Mom, captive. And the pair of them square off in a department store full of Kazlan products under Chucky's control. Which you'd think would be more interesting than it actually is. Nah, they struggle for a little bit. Andy stabs Chucky through the chest. And then Officer Mike Norris steps in for a second to shoot Chucky, and Aubrey Plaza rips Chucky's head off. And then a group of kids beat Chucky with a baseball bat before burning him. So hey, at least they kept up with the tradition of getting Chucky fucked up in the final hour. And then the movie just ends. There is this one final scene threatening that other Kazlan products might go feral now. But before you can fully appreciate the possible terror of that, they just cut to the most off-putting end credits music imaginable. Just to make sure that your final impression of this movie is as insufferable as possible. Okay, so, final thoughts, I guess. Okay, I'm going to say something that you might disagree with me on, and if you do, please feel free to debate me in the comments. This movie is not a remake. I know this movie claims to be a remake, it has the Child's Play name and everything, but what does this have to do with Child's Play? A remake takes the same basic story from the original and then either updates it or alters it in ways that ideally would either improve the media or take it in a different direction. But this movie removes pretty much the entire story. No longer is Chucky's goal to obtain a human body. His goal is quite simply to make Andy happy. The only real similarity that this poses to the original movie is the idea of a killer doll, which isn't unique to Child's Play. If this is a remake to Child's Play, then so is Annabelle, and Puppet Master, and Demonic Toys. Outside of that, and a few names arbitrarily borrowed from the original movie, this has nothing to do with anything. But okay, ignoring that, how does this movie stand in its own merits? Well, it's fine. I think this movie would have been much stronger if it allowed itself to lean more heavily into the comedy that it so obviously wanted. There are just so many ridiculous things that happen in this movie. Things that would have made for some pretty great jokes. If they were jokes. But they're treated too seriously, and as a result, this movie just doesn't seem to know what tone is. The Buddy dolls are distractingly hideous, and Chucky's personality, while most definitely different from the original movie, considering he acts more like a child here, is incredibly irritating. Like, there's nothing cool or fun about this character. I just want to kick him as hard as I can and see how far he'll fly. Although, I do find the needy girlfriend vibes he gives off pretty relatable. Like, there's this whole part in the climax of the film where he's given his big evil speech, and he's saying things like, "I was broken, Andy, but now I know how to make you happy. But maybe you don't want to be happy." And the whole time I'm sitting there like, oh my god, David, this is exactly me and you. Like, what are the odds? On that note, I do think there was a lot more on the theme of loneliness that this film could have done. And maybe it would have been improved that way if it wasn't constrained by being a remake. This movie needed to give us Karen and Andy Barclay because they were in the original movie. But perhaps if they had a character that was just slightly older get attached to this version of Chucky, then they could have done more with exploring the theme of codependence. Perhaps they could have even explored themes of abuse and how easy it would be to get drawn in by someone who keeps doing these horrible things, but only because they love you, or because they claim to love you. There were bits of that in the film, but not nearly enough, resulting in a movie that overall just felt like it could have been better if it wasn't trying to cash in on that pre-existing fan base. I'm not disappointed that I saw this movie. I am always a sucker for a severed face, but I can't in good faith recommend this movie. And now, that's it. It's over. There is no more Child's Play to talk about. Well, not until Don Mancini finishes developing that television series, of course, and transfers his soul into an inanimate object to make sure that he can keep making Chucky products until the end of time. You know, I'm really excited for that day. I'm sad to see this go. This franchise may have been long, and reviewing it may have taken forever. But, you know, I really love these movies. And what more can you ask for than... Ew, not you! Anyway, thank you for watching, Boils and Ghouls, and make sure to join me next time for something not Child's Play related for once. And until then,